All for coming. Congressman Ron Kine, and we'll be back in Washington first thing tomorrow morning. So this gives me a day to travel here in the area. I was down at the Nakusa Middle School earlier this morning, meeting with the students there. Tremendous school district. Thanks for your support for our schools in the area. They also have a really neat STEM academy that I wanted to check out, and that's science, technology, engineering, math. You know, the jobs of the future too, and they're presenting that to the children in this area so that they've got the skills they need to be competitive. But boy, they were smart and asked a lot of tough questions when I was down there. Had a good lunch with the chamber just now too, talking about opportunity zones. It was legislation that I had drafted and we got enacted that's supposed to bring early stage capital into areas like this in the Rapids area for good job creation with good paying jobs. And so we're working with the local chambers and how we can best implement it, oversee it, make sure it's doing what we intended. So in a second, we're going to turn it over to you for the listening session. If you have something of a more private or personal nature you want to talk to me about, I'll be around for a little bit afterwards. You can have a one-on-one. Ashley's wondering, what's with the midlife crisis look here? I got a kind of a little different look. Part of this is No Shave November for you hunters out there. But this is about my son who is undergoing chemotherapy, and the prognosis is all very good. He looks really good. But his brothers came in a few weekends ago. We had a head shaving party out of solidarity with him, so that's what's going on here. Although none of you guys mentioned how much you lose your heat at the top of your head in the wintertime. Notice how cold it gets right now. But before we get started, let me give you a quick update on what I've been focused on. Starting with this. Every year, working with my staff, I try to find cost savings within our own office budget that I then return to the U.S. Treasury. And that money can only be used for deficit reduction. It can't go to someone else's program or project. And so this year, by looking at our own budget, we were able to find savings of over $107,000 that we're returning, bringing our grand total up to close to $2 million. And I'm encouraging more of my colleagues to do the same thing. Listen, we're running trillion-dollar annual budget deficits right now. This is unsustainable. And we've got to get a grip on our budgets, otherwise our children, like the kids I was with this morning, are going to inherit this huge legacy of debt from us, and that wouldn't be fair to them. And I'm a big believer in pay-as-you-go budgeting. That means if you're going to offer a tax cut or a spending increase in the budget, got to find an offset to pay for it, to maintain balance. We need to get back to that type of fiscal discipline. Now, I realize $107,000 is a mere drop in the bucket, but we got to start somewhere and start looking at some of the larger structural reforms that we need in the federal budget to bring these deficits under control before this time bomb goes off in that. So I'm trying to encourage more of my colleagues to operate in this fashion too and be more serious about the stewardship that you entrusted us to be good stewards of your tax dollars and make sure it's not being wasted. And of course, I cut my political teeth with Bill Proxmire. You remember Senator Proxmire and his Golden Fleece Award? Yep. I tell you, that place is loaded of Golden Fleece recipients right now. But anyway, I thank my staff for working with me. Every year we do that. Some of my priorities in this session of Congress, listen, we've got a good healthcare system in the country, but it's still way too expensive, and it's not available to everyone. So I'm trying to figure out a way to move forward together in a bipartisan way to lower healthcare costs for all Americans. One of the main drivers of healthcare spending right now is actually with prescription drugs and the cost of prescription drugs. I've had this prescription drug action plan that I've been working on that we're trying to advance legislatively right now. And one of the key features to this is actually allowing Medicare to negotiate prices with the pharmaceutical industry, the drug companies. It's the only industry the federal government does business with, but we're not even allowed to talk price with them. That's crazy. We do it with everyone else. In fact, we do it in the VA healthcare system. We do bulk rate purchases, and we pass those savings on to our veterans. It works very, very well. We should be leveraging that same type of power in the Medicare system, passing those savings on to our seniors who need these crucial medicines. And I ordered a study in Wisconsin, in my congressional district, where the cost of insulin has gone in the last 10 years. Four-fold increase. Insulin was invented in the 1920s. This isn't a new breakthrough drug. It's been around forever. It's just lack of competition, lack of any price negotiation, so they can set their own prices, and that's wrong. So we have legislation now that's pending. President Trump actually campaigned on this issue in 2016, talking about price negotiation. We're hoping he'll embrace it so we can move forward and do something in that area. Yes, ma'am.
Are there specific pending legislation that we should be writing or calling?
Yeah, it's called HR 3. It's the House
Okay.
bill right now that.
So you support it?
I did. It was reported out of my committee. I supported the committee. Now we're waiting to bring it up on the House floor. And we're hoping to do that in the next couple of weeks. And then that would go over to the Senate. And so we're going to need to get in touch with our senators too and ask for their support with price negotiation. But there are other things that we do in the legislation. Enhanced transparency, also reporting requirements by the drug companies so they have to justify why they're jacking prices up. And then we're trying to deal with an abuse in the patent system called the secondary patent market, where a drug is about to expire from their protection period, and then they tweak it just a little bit to extend the patent protection, and that way they eliminate competition. So we're trying to end that abuse in the system too. But we're up against a pretty powerful lobby. If you haven't noticed, the drug companies have a lot of money, and they hire a legion of lobbyists in Washington to block us on this all the time. So we have some work to do to try to get this finished. So healthcare costs, trying to find ways of being able to make that more affordable, and there are other thoughts I have on it too. We have a family farm crisis. Any farmers here in our midst? Yeah, it has been.
Quick about drugs.
Pardon?
How do you feel about drug companies paying generic drug companies not to manufacture?
Yeah, it's another problem that we've had.
Patent expires.
Yeah, it's
Sounds like
the pay-to-play scheme that they've had. He was talking about how the big pharma companies are buying up the smaller generics to avoid the competition.
Well, we'll let you pay them not to manufacture the drug.
Yeah,
When it goes off patent.
yeah, and our legislation would address that as well.
That
Try
sounds
to
almost-
prohibit that type of practice, yeah.
There's no excuse for that because most other countries are paying like half of what we're paying in drug
Yeah.
costs. But their governments are allowed to negotiate.
Yeah, we're the only country that does it this way.
Yeah, exactly, and we're also the most expensive.
Canada's paying like 4 times less, and we are just across our northern border.
We're
So
not
we
really
sell
going
generic
makes no sense.
RRD for the whole world.
Yeah.
Is that the main or the only way to reduce healthcare costs? I would imagine hospital and doctor fees are a big part of it, right?
Yeah, you know, that's one of the main cost drivers, the drug prices and where that's taking us. But the other issue I've been working on is how do we get a better integrated care system, which produces better results at a better price, more coordination, more integration, patient-centered healthcare models is what we need to be building out. We have some of those in Wisconsin right now, and then changing how we pay for healthcare, I think is the ultimate answer. Instead of paying them by how much they do, how many tests, how many procedures, how many things they do, regardless of results, and that's how we pay. Pay them based on results, outcomes, outcome measurements. So quality,
How long
value.
the people are living would be an
Yeah,
indicator?
there are quality measurements being established now in the healthcare field, and these are the marks that we want them to hit, so that they're just not ordering more tests with no results to show for it. And that's really been expensive. It's called a fee-for-service system that we're trying to change. But the family farm crisis is real. It's upon us the last 4 years. Commodity prices have been low. If you're a dairy farmer, it's been especially brutal. One of the things I'm trying to do is end the trade wars so we can get these markets flowing again, our export markets, so we can start selling our product and clear the excess surplus that's been accumulating in our country, driving prices down. And we do have a pending trade agreement with Mexico and Canada right now that we're trying to get done before the holidays in order to bring certainty to that trade relationship. There are 2 border neighbors, there are 2 biggest export markets. We need to have good rules of trade, but we also, and this is where it's been held up, we need strong enforcement language in the agreement. Otherwise, it's meaningless. And that's what I've been working on, is how we can tighten up the enforcement of the agreement. So if Mexico or Canada were to try to cheat, they wouldn't be able to get away with it. And that way we can level the playing field for our workers and our businesses and our farmers.
Why is it taking so long to get that to the floor? That agreement has been in place since, what, June?
Well, first of all, it
And
was,
Pelosi won't bring it to the floor for even a discussion?
let me tell you why, because it was poorly negotiated with the enforcement language.
got that.
It was very soft and meaningless, and I think in order for this to work, there's got to be stronger enforcement language so we can follow up in case Mexico is not complying with the labor reform that they promised to do. And unfortunately, I'm on the trade committee, so I've read every word and every line of this, and I will guarantee you it was really poorly negotiated enforcement chapter under this agreement. Now, we can
Why
move
don't we bring it to
forward,
the floor
we
and
can
talk
move
about
forward
it?
with the way it was negotiated, and then when Mexico or Canada tries cheating, we'll have no mechanism to enforce it, which means we have no trade agreement. It means every country can do what they want with no repercussions. And unfortunately, too, I wish we could have got a little bit more progress on agriculture in the agreement. Because right now, agriculture doesn't get anything new under this agreement than what they already have under NAFTA. They get the same market access as they do under NAFTA. And there were other things that we were trying to fix in the agriculture field that wasn't fixed under this agreement. We're going to have to keep working on that front. But anyway, I'm worried because, you know, production agriculture is still a huge industry in Wisconsin, employing more people directly or indirectly. And we've got to step forward now together to support our family farmers who are going out in record bankruptcies again this year. And that has a huge impact, especially in the rural parts of our state right now. Rebuilding Wisconsin, we did an infrastructure investment, start rebuilding our roads and highways and bridges and ports. Again, lay that groundwork for strong economic growth. We have a higher education bill that's up for reauthorization. Want to make sure that those doors of educational opportunity are left open to all our students, regardless of their socioeconomic background. We need them in the workforce. We need them to help get the skills they need to be productive in the workforce. And we also need need-based financial aid programs to help a lot of these students who can't afford it. And I don't want these kids coming out of school with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of debt that they spend the rest of their lives trying to pay off. And I speak personally of this because I was the first generation in my family to go on to school. My dad was a telephone repairman for 36 years. My family didn't have the resources to send me to college, and so I had to take out student loans. I also qualified for low-income Pell Grants with my low-income status, and I also did work study all 4 years when I was on campus. In fact, I think I hold the undergraduate record for most toilets cleaned in a 4-year career. It was the most disgusting job on campus, but it paid the most through work study, and I was willing to do it 2 hours a day, 5 days a week when I was going to school. We need to be strengthening those programs for other students so that they can make their way as well. And then back to fiscal responsibility. I'm a big believer in pay-as-you-go budgeting. And it's worked in the past where it got us budget surpluses where we were paying down the national debt rather than adding to it. But there's been slippage with those pay-go rules in recent years, and that's why you're seeing this budget deficit explode again. And my worry is that that will then become the excuse to attack Social Security and Medicare for cuts. And I don't support that. Those are programs that are important. They need to be strengthened and preserved, and deficits shouldn't be an excuse to attack Medicare and Social Security and go after them with huge budget cuts. And finally, we've got some enrollment periods here. Medicare enrollment, you can go to medicare.gov up until December 7th if you want to take a look at some of the plans and maybe shop around and see what you need and if you want to make a switch. We also, under the Affordable Care Act, have the open enrollment for the health insurance exchanges in our state. That's until December 15th. That's healthcare.gov. If anyone has questions, they can contact my office and we can help walk you through it. There are navigators, too, that are available in the state to help answer questions. But we do want people to be able to sign up for the best deal that they can find. And the good news is, under the Affordable Care Act, the exchanges, is that the number of insurance plans competing have grown this past year. Premiums have come down 4 or 5%, which is good too. And most people who go into the exchange qualify for premium tax credits, and on average, they're paying roughly $80, $85 a month premiums for a quality health care plan, which is pretty affordable for most people at the end of the day. But those dates are coming up here quickly, and if you have questions, you can contact my office on that. Yeah.
Regarding veterans
Yep.
that are covered under VA, I'm sure there's veterans in here that use the VA clinic and it's outstanding.
Yeah.
We have to get Medicare. We're covered under VA. We're paying for Medicare. Why?
And you should be under TRICARE, or you should be under Veterans Health? Is that what you're saying?
Only veterans, not with Medicare.
Well,
Any other guys think, what do you guys think of that?
well,
Do you understand?
your case might be peculiar, so get in touch with me or leave your contact information so we can follow up and find out what's going on in your specific instance. But if you qualified, you should be receiving those VA
I have
healthcare
been.
benefits.
Once I turned 65, I got to buy Medicare.
You're not required to.
No, not required.
Then
All you have to do is file a placeholder, and then that's showing that you've got.
we are
VA
required
coverage.
to.
You can walk down to Medicare.
Yeah.
Any,
Dropped out of Medicare.
Well, let me look
Not according
into
to the people here.
leave your contact information, we can follow up,
We'll
try to
follow up.
resolve it.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
don't
sir.
pay for it.
Okay, my wife and I just joined ARP.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to hear you.
Listen, everyone should sign up for ARP health insurance because it's so much cheaper. It's a quarter of the price of we were paying before and 3 times as many benefits.
Okay. Well, I can't do any public service announcements here,
Well,
but you can, and so you just did. So there you go. All right, so with that, Amy Sue has joined us. Thank you, Amy Sue. We're gonna start with Mike Theory. Mike, how are you? Good to see you. I know some of you just marked just here to listen, which is good, because these can be informative and entertaining at the same time. But if something pops up a little bit later, again, we're gonna be around a little bit. But Mike, the floor is yours. Thanks for coming.
I got a couple of questions on there, like, okay, with this red flag law, gun law that they're trying to, our governor's trying to cram down our throats. If you should take a dislike to me or somebody else, they can just go, well, we'll just take that person's gun away from them. And the person that this is happening to, it don't seem like there's any recourse to get their weapons back. It just seems like this is a government-run gun confiscation scheme, if you ask me. And I'm wondering too about our Second Amendment rights, because, our First Amendment rights, because they're being taken away, that the media is being controlled. What people are seeing on the TV, they don't realize that the TV they watch, the radio they listen to, all these media sources have been controlled by a handful of people their whole lives. These people control everything we see and hear, and they control people's opinions, and most people don't have enough on the ball upstairs to see beyond the stuff. I mean, when the news you see on TV, over 90% of it's anti-Trump, anti-Republican, how can that be honest and fair? So that tells you somebody's controlling all this. And I don't know, I'm digressing here, but
Mike, let me talk.
these are things that concern me greatly.
Yeah.
If these aren't resolved, these First and Second Amendments are not resolved, this country is going down the crapper.
Let me talk about the red flag law since you raised it. Listen, I've been a strong supporter of Second Amendment rights.
Okay,
I believe people do have a constitutional right. And I'm a
We don't need to rewrite that.
I'm a multiple gun owner myself. I love to hunt. We downed a few doe last week. Hopefully everyone had a safe hunting season around here. It's
So it
just,
doesn't say that, the Second Amendment doesn't say it's hunting. It has nothing to do with hunting, we have to write.
well, anyway, let's get back to the red flag law.
Okay.
The red flag laws that I have seen would require a judicial determination that a person is a threat to themselves or someone else before their guns could be confiscated. So it's due process determination. It just can't be made up by some accusation from someone outside. There has to be a court hearing with a judicial determination that that person poses a threat to themselves or to someone else before law enforcement can confiscate their guns. And that complies with the Constitution, as long as it's a due process judicial determination, not some subjective wish. That's what the law calls for. So, and quite frankly, we need it. As a former special prosecutor, I've seen people who have some form of mental illness who shouldn't be in possession of weapons. And these are the ones that shouldn't have weapons on them.
How are you gonna determine that then?
Through a judicial proceeding. I just
Yeah,
told
how do
you.
you determine this guy over here has got?
No, it's not subjective. You gotta go through a court proceeding with evidence offered and some psychological evaluation done before their guns are confiscated, unless they've already committed a crime. And then,
Well, that's a good question. Did you have to get brought into court to be represented, or how does this work? I mean, besides the individual, does he have to be brought into court for this?
in order for his guns to be confiscated, yeah, you have to be brought before a judicial proceeding, a judge,
What
through an
recourse?
evidentiary hearing. And there has to be a finding of probable cause that they have some form of mental illness where they pose a threat to themselves or someone else. And then that would
I
be,
think what's saying is before any law is passed, that we would hope that our representatives would make sure that would comply.
absolutely. And I agree with that. It has to meet, it has to pass constitutional muster.
Right.
You're right. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to clarify before I get too far. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm independent. Now, when it comes to red flag, I work on an ambulance department for more than 6 years.
A what?
And an ambulance department for more than 6 years, I've seen stuff that most people never see, or don't wanna see.
Yeah.
When it comes to red flag, I'm for it, and here's why. If you're out hunting in the field and you accidentally shoot your hunting buddy, that's an accident. When you actually pick up a firearm and shoot yourself, or I should say, shoot somebody else on purpose, was attempt to knock them down or kill them. Sorry, that's not good. Or, in one case we had, the guy was so mentally deficient, and you could tell just by the way he was talking and acting, he actually shot himself to prove a point to somebody else. He should have never had a firearm. And I've been in the National Guard, I've fired weapons and I owned weapons, but after dealing with people being shot, I gave them up because I didn't know who was going to come into my house, grab my firearms that were secure, and take a shot at me. I didn't want none of that. So when I'm out and I'm hearing people say, oh, we got the right to kill this, kill that, it's like, you don't have the right to take a shot at somebody else and kill them. And there's been plenty of examples of that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much argument there. It's just, it has to be a judicial proceeding, a constitutional judicial proceeding to make that determination. It can't be subjective.
We're all getting together.
Raylan Luce? Raylan here? Oh, where are you? I hear you.
Way back here.
Oh, way back there. Hi.
Hi.
Anything you want to raise today?
Well, I just wanted to say that I have a friend who is now dad, but he was on disability and he couldn't afford his could not afford food, rent, and his drugs. He was diabetic. So during the summer, he had to be homeless. During the winter, he had to have a place to stay, so he rented a place. So that meant he couldn't take his drugs. To say the least, he went into a diabetic stroke, which went into a coma, and he's now dead. And there is just no excuse on the face of this earth that any American should have to do that. He was in his 50s.
So, greater access to health care?
Pardon?
Greater access to health care then?
Something,
Important.
but to not be able to live or to rent,
Yeah.
it's the whole thing's ridiculous. It should never, ever have happened.
Yeah. I tell you,
He even went to the church, and the church says, well, we don't want to take care of him.
you'd be shocked too. I've been working with the state VA too on how to deal with veterans homeless issue in our state.
Another
2
one.
out of 3 homeless people in our country today served on our military, and
Yeah.
that is a blemish on our nation's character that
Yes.
we need to fix. That's inexcusable.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Raylan. Thanks for coming today. Cecil Stelzer Johnson, up there she is.
Hi
Good
there.
to see you. Thanks for coming.
I'm wondering if you're still against single payer, because when we're talking about the opioid epidemic and a way to actually figure out where the drugs are coming from and where they're going, having a centralized system would be a darn good idea.
Yeah, right, yeah. And you're in favor of the single payer? All right.
Totally in favor of single payer, yes.
Yeah. Big questions, need answers, how to pay for it. Also, a big question in this area is where do the reimbursements go with our local healthcare providers? Because we are the lowest Medicare reimbursed region in the nation right now.
Wow.
If we lock in at those rates, our hospitals will go out of business overnight. So that's a big issue that needs to get resolved in any discussion on this plan, because they make up a lot of that through private insurance
Well,
that they collect.
As you run, a lot of other countries in the world, we're the only nation that is not doing that, that is halfway civilized.
Yeah.
And all of the other nations in the world can afford it. So they are moving their money around, but they can do it. So this, oh, money is an object, no, We're not doing it because we don't want to do
Yeah,
it.
but as a representative, though, I have to be careful on where the money's coming from, how we're gonna pay for these things. I wanna see that plan, obviously, before I buy into anything,
I'll
because.
send you
that'd be
the link. We're number
Yeah.
39 in the world as far as
Yeah,
healthcare.
we're
We
spending.
have the best doctor, the best hospital, but where we really fail miserably is in the distribution of care. And you can hear veterans here and some other people have some friends that die because they cannot afford to eat and have their drugs.
That's right. No, there's no question, we spend more than any other country, and we oftentimes get worse results than most other countries too, so
We
it's
pay
a big
about
problem.
twice as much.
Yeah. And you've got fair maps on here too?
Fair maps, yes, that is another one, and the gerrymandering is, as far as I'm concerned, not a partisan issue. It is not Democratic, it is not Republican issue, it is bad governance. The fact that politicians can get in a room, all of the same party, and rig up the maps because they've won an election. Well, after that, they keep winning the elections because it is gerrymandered. But I'm happy that you have AB 303 and SB 288 that is supporting fair maps. And I certainly hope that you're for it. As I see it, it is not at all partisan because in Illinois, it's the other way around. It is Democrats that are rigging it up.
Yeah.
Here it is
That's right.
Republicans, but it is just not the way that it should be done.
Yeah.
Because it is not Republicans and not Democrats, it is the people who vote that get sacked every time. And sometimes you see some really big piece of legislation that are held that are not going forward, even though the people
Yeah.
are so much in favor by
Yeah.
way more than
Well,
50%.
Cecilia, I think you said it best. I mean,
Yep.
people should choose the representatives. The representatives shouldn't choose their voters, and that's what gerrymandering does. It gives the
Yep.
politicians a chance to choose who's going to be voting. And I agree, I think that's wrong. I've supported nonpartisan judicial commissions to draw the political map, but as you pointed out, both parties do not have clean hands on this. If one party's in complete control, they can't help themselves, but gerrymander that map to their advantage. And we've seen that from other states too. So it's another reason why I think we need to lock arms and jump into icy waters together with nonpartisan judicial commissions that would draw the political maps and bring a little bit of fairness to the process then. Yeah, but this is a state issue. You gotta contact your state reps, because it's the state legislatures working with the governors that draw the political map. We don't do it out in Washington. Yeah, that's at the state level.
Krug again.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming.
Sorry.
Wendy Winslow? Wendy, hi Wendy. I love your hat. Looks nice and warm.
It is, and I ain't taking it off because you wouldn't want to see the hat there.
Okay.
So-
Fair enough.
Okay, so first as a disclaimer, I myself am not a farmer,
Yeah.
but I have lived in Wisconsin Rapids for over 30 years. We are surrounded by hundreds of dairy farms,
Yeah.
small family farms, and even before the tariffs, I don't want to discuss what they call the elephant in the room. Somebody had to have gotten that. Anyway, but even before those tariffs made everything worse, farms were going, as you mentioned, bankrupt at an increasing rate. And I'm trying to find the articles or sources to give me a better concept of what the factors are, and then therefore, what we can do about it.
Yeah.
Is it energy costs, a massive investment in solar panels on barn roofs? I mean, that sounds funny, but it's just, one part of the puzzle. It's the cyclical nature, I understand, of the commodities prices, and then you get a loan and the interest rates are high, and so then you plant more, and then even though the commodity prices came up, now there's a surplus, and then they crash again, and you can't pay your loan. I've read articles about that. But I haven't seen an organized article yet that would really put it all in its places, all
Well,
pieces.
thanks for bringing it up. And as you pointed out, it's kind of complicated. It's not just one sole cause that's led to this. It's been a trend for some time. Certainly, the trade war is happening at the wrong time, and it's piling on right now because we're losing market exports to help clear the surplus that could help support the price then. But this has been a beef of mine since I first went to Congress. I saw how these government programs work with the commodity subsidies, and they get loaded up at the top. Most of the subsidy money goes to a few but very large agro-producers, and they use that money to consolidate their operation, to crank up production whenever they want. which drives prices down and it squeezes our family farmers. And I've been the one leading the reform effort in Washington for years to get away from these government subsidies to huge agribusiness. But guess what? Big ag has big lobbyists in Washington that protect it and expand these programs. And we're seeing it now too with the bailout money that the president's doling out. It's based on the same formula. So it's the big entities that are getting the bulk of the bailout.
A
And not
couple of
the
guys in Brazil who own farms up here got
Brazil,
huge amounts.
Chinese-owned farms are receiving this bailout. The other problem I have with it too is that we're borrowing $26 billion to randomly distribute to farmers now because of the trade war. But we're borrowing that money from China because we're no longer able to sell our agriculture products to China. It's crazy, and this isn't gonna fix it. But also, you know, our farmers are very good, and there are economies of scale, so when they get bigger, they become more efficient, and that's just economics. But we ought not be subsidizing them at the same time, which hurts our family farmers, I feel. And I've been leading that charge, trying to get those programs reformed so that our family farmers have a fighting chance to stay in business then. But it's multifaceted and it's complicated, and there are a lot of things that go into it. I mean, just this year we had horrible weather, late plant, hard to get it off the fields now. My corn's still standing. I'm not sure when. Amy Sue's been working weekends on her farm, trying to get all this stuff done, and it's just been a convergence of a lot of bad things happening to our farmers at the same time. I hope those that can hang in there, because we need them for our food security system. You know, I hate to wake up one morning completely dependent on a few but very large agribusinesses for all our food needs. That's not healthy for our country, and we'll be very dependent on them in the future. But thanks, Wendy, for raising such an important topic. Stephanie, thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Yep.
On my sheet, I just went.
Maybe Robert's got the floor now.
I just went environment, and there are two assets of the environment that I'm concerned about. The one at the state level is I would love to see the introduction of shredded plastic into the asphalt of our roads. Australia's doing it, the United Kingdom's doing it, India has done it. And recently, the University of California, San Diego, they've actually developed a process to insert the shredded plastic into the asphalt. What it does, it takes all this plastic waste from the landfills, from the oceans, from the waters, and it buries it in asphalt. It doesn't come out. There are no contaminants from the plastic out of the asphalt because it's trapped. Also, it reduces the amount of oil that has to go into the asphalt, which makes it a little bit easier on the budgets because it costs less to generate the roads. And with the other countries doing it with their experiences, I mean, United Kingdom, they do get cold weather, they get warm weather. India, warm, so it matches up with the Arizona and areas like that. But that is one means to get rid of the plastic, put it into a substance that we need. And India has even said that the roads don't crack, they don't pothole, they just last. If you need a resurface, you just put another layer of that on and it stays.
Yeah.
So they've had great luck in the other countries, and I'd like to see that at the state level, and maybe even the feds, to say, okay, let's play with this process.
Yeah,
see
it
how
sounds
works.
like a great idea. I'm gonna look into that and see whether or not our road builders are considering that, and thinking of adopting that method too for.
Oh, that's good, because
for our
I send a
road
lot of
use.
stuff to carry already.
Okay, that's right. I see you served in the Guard too for a number of years?
Yes,
Yeah.
serving in the Guard, National Guard or the Army Reserve, because a friend of mine did it, you do not get the classification of a veteran.
Right.
You're just somebody who did, the National Guard thing or the other pretend Army thing. We don't get that. And, we are annoyed with it, but we understand it. But,
I've got legislation pending now that would fix that, because I've seen that, especially with Iraq and Afghanistan,
Yes.
we've had so many
Yes.
deployments with our Guard units. In fact, the 127 Infantry Regiment just came home last Friday from a long stint in Afghanistan. I was there about a month ago on the ground in Afghanistan, meeting with our military command and our Guard units. Let me tell you, nothing will make you more proud to be an American than seeing the job our men and women in uniform do for us overseas, especially these tough assignments that they have to do. When I met with our top brass, General Miller in Afghanistan, nothing but high praise for our Wisconsin units and the job they were doing, because they were well-trained, well-motivated, We had the 115 Air Wing carrying out missions in Afghanistan too, and I had a chance to get together with them before they deployed. Actually, it took me up in an F-16, which was really cool. I missed my calling. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and then I was diagnosed red-green colorblind, and they wouldn't let me fly because of my colorblindness. So who knows? I could have been doing sorties over Afghanistan instead. But and soon we're going to have the 128 infantry from Wisconsin going to Afghanistan for a 1-year deployment. So you guys do a lot for us, and 1 year boots on the ground, that's a heck of a service, and so I'm trying to fix that legislatively to get the recognition you deserve.
And the other environmental thing that really concerns me is these consolidated animal feeding operations.
Yeah.
They put a lot of manure, a lot of urine in a relatively small space. The cattle are just crammed into every acre they can get, which in turn contaminates the soils. And if they don't have a place to put manure on the farm, they buy an adjacent property and pile it up over there. Or what I've heard them do is they actually run a drainage ditch over to another place and have it run over the sewer pipe. So they can put it in some other location. So this is just one example.
Perfect musical tune for the subject. But
And then the neighboring landowners, they have property devaluations because it smells so dang bad. And plus the soils are bad and the waters are bad. We had a study done recently, oh God, what was the name of the study? I can get it to you. But they even proved that there is a correlation between contaminated water and the cattle.
it's been an especially difficult problem in the Central Sands region of our
That's what
state.
it is. It's substantial.
Yeah, we've been tracking that very closely and trying to, and I've been a big supporter of the conservation title of the Farm Bill,
Yeah.
because these are voluntary incentive-based land and water conservation programs to avoid that problem and to develop quality water in all our communities. It's important that we do this. And I've recently introduced legislation that would provide production tax credits for methane digesters, a way to manage the manure and turn it into energy so that it's not seeping off or not contaminating our water supply, and produce energy out of that too. The technology's gotten really good at that, and we need to spur that development even more.
Well, one thing I would like to see the state and the federal government do is to put a moratorium on the CAFLs. You cannot expand them, nor can you create new ones. Stop it.
Get in touch with your state reps in the governor's office.
Isn't she one of those?
And- Well, she used to be, Amy still used to be, that's right. But yeah, I mean, you may have noticed a few years ago, Madison took that local siting decision away from
Yeah, and
local
they don't
communities.
listen. The Republican side, they support the CAFL. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, so get in touch with the state reps and let them hear this
So
as well.
that's having a very negative impact on the farm industry also, because they're overproducing,
Yeah.
which drives down the
That's right.
price, which drives them down.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks for your service too. Appreciate it. Roger, Sam? Peter? How are you, Peter?
Probably not.
Anything in particular you want to raise today?
Well, I put on the paper there that the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about the Second Amendment right now. And my concern is, they'll take care of their side of it, but my concern is the mass shootings that continue in this country. Why has not something been done, and what is the plan to resolve the problem?
Yeah, well, again, Roger, Peter, thanks for raising it. This cannot be the new normal. We just cannot internalize the mass shootings and say there's nothing that we can do about it. I refuse to accept that. One of the questions one of the kids asked me this morning at the middle school was, what are we doing on school safety? This is a 7th grader worried about school safety. It should be the last thing on these kids' minds when they wake up and go to school in the morning, is whether or not they're going to come home safe at the end of the day. And yet this is the new reality that they have to live in. And I've been respectful of Second Amendment rights, but I think there are some common sense gun safety measures we can take in order to enhance their safety. Universal background checks. Why aren't we doing that? There are too many loopholes right now where people who aren't supposed to be obtaining these weapons are getting them. And yet the background check system works well. It does intercept a lot of people who are not supposed to purchase these weapons. Every year we've got tens of thousands of them that are intercepted because of the background check system. And why that's become controversial. I mean, I go to whitetail banquets Turkey Federation banquet, DU banquets, I win a gun from time to time. Takes like 2 minutes to clear a background check. That's it. So why aren't we doing this on a universal basis? I don't understand.
You actually propose that for every private sale?
For what?
For every private sale?
Well, right now, only federally licensed gun dealers have to do a background
Propose
check.
I have to do that to sell a gun to my neighbor?
No, there's exceptions for friends and neighbors, family members, there's exceptions on that.
That'll be universal then.
Yeah.
Illinois, you
Well,
can't
there-
pass your weapon on down your own son.
Right, and there
Can't have
are,
that here.
there are some practical
I
exceptions
mean,
like
I
that.
didn't come here to talk about Second Amendment, but for school shootings or even long gun shootings, it's been statistically, it's been consistent for about 30 years, maybe, I may be overstating that, but as long as I could see that the FBI's been publishing statistics, all long gun shootings, every long gun shooting in the United States, about 700 per year. That's it. It's statistically insignificant for 300 million people.
Until it happens in your own school, or in your own church, or your own community, and it's pretty significant, pretty fast.
Yeah, but
No.
still, it's statistically insignificant. Almost.
And some people are willing to live with
almost
that, I can respect that.
Almost every shooting.
But I
in the United
imagine
States-
Peter might have a little
but
different,
almost
say.
every shooting in the
Peter?
United States is done with a
Yes.
handgun.
You,
Almost every one is done with a handgun.
take a look at, what the president has said about going on Fifth Avenue and shooting somebody, and nobody give a damn about it. That's where you start. And the other half of it is, take a look on the TV when you see the commercials for the movies coming out. Most of the stuff you see is the guns are blazing and the cars are going down the sidewalk, knocking people off. I mean, where is this culture going to? That's the question.
Amen.
I see you were Vietnam too, during the 60s.
Twice.
And you're a recipient of the Purple Heart.
And unfortunately,
Well, thanks for your service.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Steve Siegler? Jen Moore? Is Jen here? Hi, Jen. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm a school counselor for actually the Port Edward School District, right down the road from Nicosa.
Yep.
And so one of the reasons I'm here today, I'm here to talk from a school perspective, not a personal perspective, but as a school counselor, and I think everybody's aware of this and we can all agree, we've got a mental health crisis going on in the country and our schools are seeing some of that. But I guess I want to talk a little bit more about public mental health. So as a school counselor, I'm at the middle and high school, I have students that go into crisis is what we call it, where they basically need to see someone other than just me to get evaluated because they're in crisis and something could go very wrong in their lives, whether that's a completion of a suicide or even homicidal thoughts, okay? And so what's going on is I can get parents on board, but we can't get these kids help because there's no help to be had. So there's not beds in the state. You know, we're calling Eau Claire, we're calling Milwaukee's got some places, Appleton's got some places. We're calling all over, and parents and kids are wanting to get help, and we can't get them in anywhere because there's literally no beds. I've had parents that we've called everywhere in the state and Minnesota and Illinois, and they literally can't get their kids help. And so I guess I'm wondering, for all of the talk that we're doing about mental health in this country, there's not a whole lot of help for people that actually want it, and who are willing to pay, and so I'm wondering what's going on at federal level to discuss some of that.
Well, thanks for what you do. School counseling is not an easy profession, and we need more of it, quite frankly. That early identification is so crucial, as you probably know, making sure our kids are being early identified and then getting the help they need so that they can turn things around and lead a healthy life ultimately. We did pass mental health parity a while back, but the implementation of that has been taking a while. Some private insurance plans are still refusing to cover, which they're not supposed to. But we also need to, I think, doubling down on our resources being driven in the mental health area. Talk about placement, services, counseling. We're in desperate need. There's shortages everywhere. Part of this is what's driving the opioid epidemic too, is self-medication. And we've got to treat this as a public health crisis and not as a criminal justice response when it comes to opioid addiction. Part of this is based on mental health needs that aren't being addressed right now. I couldn't think of a better value for the dollar though at these earlier grade levels where you're at, to get the most bang for the buck and how we can try to turn this cycle around. But we definitely need more attention and focus and prioritizing in our own budget at all levels, federal, state, and local, in order to address this right now. And then encouraging more people like yourself to be entering these fields where we have huge shortages. Part of that's lack of pay and competitive salaries that can be offered too.
Lack of pay, or even, we've talked about, you know, sometimes, nurses that are going to school, hospitals will say, if you, will pay for your schooling as long as you stay here for
Yeah.
5 years, you know, and I think about that in our area, if there was some program where they'd say, you know, if you go to school for this and you're gonna stay in this area for 5 years, we'll pay something.
Yeah, loan forgiveness, incentives and things of that nature too. How long have you been at Port Edwards now?
This is my 11th year. I actually was a teacher there and then kind of have morphed into
Oh, wow.
counseling throughout the years.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's a really good district.
I bet, yeah. Very
But
good things.
we just need more professional help, and we're seeing our numbers, it continues to get worse every year. The problem continues to grow, and I'm not alone in thinking that. All of the area counselors, and we work pretty closely with human services, and they're good. They're trying to do everything they can, but they're short-staffed, and there's not a lot of money there either to hire more bodies. And so, you know, I don't want to place blame on anyone. Everyone is working really hard, but there's just not enough
Trend lines are
bodies.
going in the wrong direction though.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Appreciate it. Sue, or is it Joe Humphrey?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, oh, here's Joe.
We already talked about my only issue to raise with you is the USMCA.
Yeah, why do you think this is so important?
Well, because we need trade, and we need fair trade, and the only way to get that up to the level where it can be negotiated, as you say, is to get it on the floor and get talking about it. But if Pelosi just keeps it in her hip pocket.
Joe, let me ask you, have you read the agreement?
Pardon?
Have you read the agreement?
I have read it, yes.
Have you seen what it does as far as market access for
Yes.
our farmers with Mexico and Canada?
It's so vastly superior to what we had.
Joe, you know how much
Ready to
more
go.
market access our farmers get under USMCA than what they currently already enjoy under NAFTA? Zero. The rates don't change. The market access is exactly the same as what we have right now under
We can agree to
NAFTA.
disagree because you're wrong.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Kyle Cronin? Hey, Kyle.
I'm a school administrator with the Port Edwards School District. And Jennifer and I came today really to talk about that same issue. And and again, not from the standpoint of a specific need within the schools, but just overall in the public health arena. And I've been fortunate to work with children for over 20 years, and 15 of it in administration. And it is quite evident within the last 10 years that there's been a sea change in terms of what has gone on with mental health. There was a time when the school counselor once or twice a year, would maybe 3 times a year, 4 times would be a busy year, have to call and ask for assistance with county crisis, and that certainly has increased with time. Back when it was less frequent, county crisis would show up, and again, no blame on county crisis. They are struggling to find employees and workers and people too.
Right.
But now they're asking school counselors who are not trained in crisis management in that sense, not mental health crisis management. I want to advocate for our counselors who are now making phone calls to those institutions, looking for the beds and services available for students in need. And unfortunately, there's more. And I think you're absolutely on track when you talk about the connection to the drug crisis we're seeing in terms of that drug abuse. I think there is certainly some connection to that. But I think overall, and I don't want to paint a bad picture for the children. The majority of our students are still doing great work, but we certainly are seeing an increase in the number of students with some very high needs in that mental health area.
There's not enough resources to apply.
And I think there's numerous causes for that and numerous reasons. Unfortunately, you know, at the moment, we're in the crisis mode of trying to respond to it. You know, and certainly, your comments are appreciated here today, with that regard.
Well, I'm glad you also mentioned the need to fully fund IDEA.
Yeah,
The federal
that-
government
yes,
has
I
never
had that
lived
on
up to
my-
our promise to fully fund that program. That's a burden that falls back locally then. I've been an advocate of increasing, ramping up full funding for that program because that could go a long ways too, in special
I think that
education plans.
certainly could, you know, that would give us, some of the teaching resources that are desperately needed, with our special education, special needs population, absolutely. And, you know, at the moment, the state funds that. I think this year they've promised 26%, if they have sufficient funds.
Yeah, yeah,
And, that's if they have sufficient funds.
it's not good enough.
And, yeah.
Yeah, we also passed opioid legislation about a year and a half ago in Washington. That's to partner with the states and local communities as far as the response. And I've been advocating, or at least trying to keep in mind the need of our school districts around Wisconsin too, with some of those federal grant opportunities when they're available. See if we can keep that, drive that into the school districts at a much more a fairer basis. So it's an opportunity there, but we also need to back up that legislation with proper funding now too, to make it work. Yeah, well, thank you both for coming and sharing that viewpoint. So thank you too for coming. Good to hear from you. Ken C? Kenneth C? There he is. Hey Ken, how you doing?
I don't know where to start, really. But I got, one issue I got is with 44 counties in the state of Wisconsin, if you're taking care of an elderly parent in your home, you get a stipend amount of money. Wood County ain't one of them.
Yes.
Is that because there are poor counties and whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's one of my issues. I'm taking care of my 95-year-old mother.
Are you really?
And I took her out of the nursing home because she didn't deserve to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet, it's taking a toll on my life,
Yeah.
you know, not directly, but you know.
Ken, we've done a really bad job as a country preparing for the aging of our population and our parents, grandparents. I'm on a committee that just had a hearing on elder care, what more we need to do to support caregivers like yourself and the family to make your life a little bit easier, because all that stress, all that responsibility is on your
I mean, it was
shoulders.
costing her $275 a day to be in a county nursing home.
Yeah, they're expensive.
That's ridiculous,
They're expensive, absolutely.
you know? I mean, what do they do for her? Change her diaper and feed her and put her in a room and call it a suite?
Yeah.
You know?
And if they do
I'm on the county board, I
qualify
can show
for
you.
Badger care, we're the lowest.
Said, I'm on a county board, I could show you what we do, if you wanna go over there on a tour.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they got nurses there, they got a staff that's huge.
Ken, the other problem we have under Badger Care is we have the lowest reimbursed state in the nation when it comes to Badger Care funding for senior care. We're 50 out of 50. And that makes it hard for our nursing homes to stay in business and for these care facilities to make it work, and puts a lot of pressure on them then too. So again, that's a state legislature issue, and I'd encourage you to get in touch with your state reps and talk
I
about
mean,
long-term
I
care.
won't live long enough to see, I mean, I'm a military veteran, and
Thanks for coming.
there was a time when a congressional investigation meant something.
Yeah,
Today, it doesn't mean an essence thing, you know?
yeah,
Because when we got something in our military unit, there was gonna be a congressional, boy, everybody was shaking in their boots.
yeah.
Now they just send you a letter saying, we're doing it like this because regulation such and such says such and such, and we can do such and such. And
Yeah,
that's the end of it.
that's right, yeah. So you
You
were,
know, no
you're-
common sense left.
So you
The
were Air
reason I'm
Force.
writing you and others is because there's a problem with the system.
yeah,
But we're not looking at the system, we're looking at a computer-generated can letter, as I call it, that's got a site for this rate, and a site for that procedure, and a site for that one,
Yeah.
based on a regulation that probably is outdated or not appropriate,
yeah,
because they don't want to look at you personally, they want a robotic you.
yeah. That's a good point, yeah. Well, thanks for your service, Ken. 20 years, Air Force?
Yes, sir.
That's a long stint, yeah. Terry Whitmer?
I was listening on the insurance, and if we do have it where we lose our insurance, our pre-existing conditions are held against us, can we buy insurance from Canada?
From Canada?
Yeah.
I think you have to be a citizen of Canada to qualify for that, yeah.
We can't get a trade agreement on insurance.
What's your feeling on term limits for the legislative branch? I wonder, had you seen something today where one of the presidential candidates, and I guess I wasn't going to disclose what party, but obviously by saying that, but it could have been a Republican as well as a Democrat, but it said, and you never know if it's the truth or not, but some Democrat took, they quoted, I don't remember at the time period, but he had taken something over $600,000 in campaign contributions from the pharmaceutical companies. Don't you think with term limits there would be a lot less of this buying votes by?
My concern with that is you're going to get a lot of young, fresh blood that will be easy meat for a lot of these lobbyists in Washington because they won't be as steep in the issues as those with a little bit more experience. And
Don't you think they'll be a lot more honest though?
Probably not. I've seen a lot of new members who sell their souls to the highest bidder, and I think that's part of the human nature. But let me give you an example. Jim Sensenbrenner announced his retirement. He's the longest serving member. I like Jim. I've worked well with Jim because Jim is an institutionalist. He knows how to get things done. He knows how to put coalitions together to get things done too. That came through some years of experience of him being there and seeing how human nature works in a body of 435 independent contractors, is basically what we are. And being able to pull people together to get some things accomplished is hard, really hard. I'm proud of the fact that recent rating had me the second most independent member of Congress because I'm not afraid to work across the aisle, try to find some partners to do things with, and I think we need more of that in our legislative process right now, rather than just blind partisan loyalty all the time. Things have gotten too polarized, and therefore too difficult to get things done. And there's a lot of areas of common ground that can be had here. And so I hated to see Jim, make the, and I understand why. I mean, his health, he's getting up there in age right now, and his wife has been having a lot of health issues, and I get all that. But we're gonna lose a lot of experience there because of his retirement, and we're gonna get a young person now replacing him who won't know how to do this, and it'll just make it a lot more hard to get things done on behalf of Wisconsin. Okay, yes, sir. Get the
I have
final
a
word.
question for you. Are we learning anything from California?
Are we doing?
Are we learning anything from California? We don't have to look at Venezuela. We can look at California. Are we learning anything from that?
Yeah, they're doing a lot.
We're talking about climate change and all that stuff.
Yeah,
They made it so you couldn't cut down trees up your power lines because you're affecting the environment.
Yeah.
They've got nothing but problems now, but they can certainly have the people's attention when they cut their power.
Right.
So they bought gas generators so they can have their own power. It's all part of the save energy stuff. Hey, people that have electric cars, they're all gonna save the future for our kids. I'm gonna hit the bullshit button, because this is a malarkey tour. Okay? They gotta charge them up with something. Exactly, because it ain't working. But can Wisconsin learn anything from that without paying the price?
I think we can. I think we can do it the Wisconsin way. I think we have enough innovation and enough bright minds here in the state where we can chart our path.
So it would be important that the people that run academia, that fight tooth and nail against anybody that wants to say anything derogatory, I'll cut this short. I just don't believe everything I hear about climate change. No. So it's important that, and I know that you don't want to hear it because there's a lot of people in here that have taken that in, but it's important that we can learn without burning our hands on the hot stove. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks for coming. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Bill Clendenning too on Wood County Board.
He
Bill,
fell asleep.
did he? He does a great job. Thanks for everything. We're going to get kicked out of this room in a couple minutes, so we can chat a little bit outside too. But thank you all for